Is 6:47. So we're going to go ahead and get started.
Great.
All right. So I wanted to preface this with this is going to be an exciting conversation because parents, everybody is talking about the individual candidates, and there are a lot of people that don't have jobs. But what we also have to realize is that there are a lot of students who have just graduated and they are having a really hard time finding a role. So, our discussion today is going to be focused on what do the parents do when they sent their kids to school spending $100,000 or more for education, and it's been a year and they haven't been able to find a role. So, that's one of the areas that we're going to anchor in. The other area that we'll anchor in is there is a solution to this. And while everyone is not aware of the different things that can be done, especially as parents, of how we can prepare our children, we want to make sure that we're sharing that information so that everyone here can get the benefit. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest. His name is Craig Rosen, and I hope that I said that right.
You did.
Craig focuses squarely in this area in which we have a lot of college students and parents who are extremely concerned about where their children are going to end up once they finish their degree. But before we go into that, I'd like everybody to take a second and let's put some information in the chat. The first question that I will ask is, how many interviews do you think it takes in order for you to land a role? And let's say for 2026, we're guessing, and that's okay. And I'll share what the answer is. So inside the chat, go ahead and give your guess of how many interviews it takes in order to actually land a role.
And let me interrupt 1 second, Gerald or Tiffany. I have a friend, Alex, who's waiting to get in.
All right, fantastic. It says people, I think they're in now. Fantastic. All right, so the question that I put in the chat was, and I was going to say nobody used ChatGPT, but that's okay. In the chat, put how many interviews do you think it takes in order for you to get into a role? You know, if I had that Jeopardy music, play that right now. All right, I see 6 to 10, 3 to 5, 5. Fantastic. All right, so here's what we got. It is 5 to 6 interviews with different companies. Not even talking about the same company. 5 to 6 different companies, on average 3 to 4 interviews in order to land a role today. I mean, if we think about the magnitude of the amount of communication that has to happen in order for that to come about, that is what we're dealing with. The second thing that I would like to share is that overall, there's been 9,700 jobs added per month. This was the lowest we've ever had since 2002 recession. This is where our children are experiencing that there are less jobs being added, and we have been in the lowest growth cycle for jobs since 2002. And so I find that really interesting. Okay.
Do you know by chance what the number was in 2002? Because, I mean, I don't know, 9,000 jobs per month to me sounds like a lot of jobs, but I guess it's not compared to what it used to be. And then I'm also surprised that it takes, what did you say, on average,
Three
3 to 5. I put 5 because of, based on my profession, but I actually thought it would take more these days because it just really seems like the competition is fierce out there and that many companies are not hiring. So I was actually surprised. To me, that kind of sounds low.
Yeah, and when I say 3 to 5, I mean 3 to 5 companies, and then within those companies, you're doing 3 or 4 interviews. So it really adds up quickly, right? If you did 4 interviews, that's like 20 total interviews to find a role, and that's really where we are today. Okay, so let me introduce my guest. So, referred as the interview whisperer, Craig Rosen has interviewed over 10,000 candidates and hired over 2,000 employees during his career. He is a serial entrepreneur who has successfully started 5 businesses from scratch. He is currently the founder of Interview Focus, which is a cloud-based web application platform reinventing interview prep. Craig is a graduate of Vanderbilt University and resides in Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you so much. What a great introduction. I couldn't have written it better myself.
Fantastic.
It's great to be here, Gerald. Thanks for including me.
Yeah, no problem. And if you don't know me, I am Gerald Gordon. I am a founder of a company called Reference Me, and we focus on making it easier for companies to decide whether they're going to hire you or not based off of certified references. Because in today's world, everybody has a perfect resume. So what's going to set you apart between you trying to get hired or even get into the interviewing room? We believe that references that are certified is the way to go. All right, so let's go jump right into these questions. I know I gave an introduction to Craig, but sometimes you just want to hear how they came about. And so if you can give us a couple of minutes of what your journey has been from the companies that you've been in, and then maybe what brought you to the place where you knew Interview Focus was going to be something that would help people.
So thanks again, Gerald. I started my career after graduating from Vanderbilt at Procter & Gamble in Dallas, Texas, and I worked for them for a couple of years. And I had 4 interviews, so I was right within your range and got the job, fortunately. But I had quite a few friends have up to 14 interviews and did not get the job. And this was years ago. So that stuck with me a lot. I felt it was unfair to have that many interviews and still not get the job. And so as time went on, as Gerald said, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started a licensed sporting goods mail order company. We had 500 employees. We had 200% turnover. So we hired lots of pick, pack, and shippers for the warehouse, as well as customer service agents in the call center. And I was in charge of operations, so I was the last say in every interview. So I developed a real knack of how to interview quickly. And then I went on and started a summer sports camp up in Maine with my wife. And we would hire 60 to 70 different counselors, mostly student athletes. But to hire 60 or 70 student athletes, you have to interview 600 to 700 because some might not show, some have a real specific specialty. So you really need to get the numbers up. So, and we own that camp business for 15 years. So 15 times 600 is many, many thousands of interviews. So where I'm going with this is, yes, I've had the experience, but what I love to do is help people that need that boost of confidence to get them in order to get the job. And what I find is practicing is so helpful because it tells the individual, whether student or out of college, what they need to do to improve. It alerts them to things that need to be perfected in order to have that ideal interview.
That's an amazing. First of all, thank you for sharing that background. I can't imagine what it feels like today, having so much experience with interviews and then actually building an application with all of this knowledge that you have to be able to help people. I just think that that's amazing. All right, so we're going to jump right into these questions. So as a parent, we know that there are a lot of parents out there who are hearing about AI, and they're very concerned about how little do they know about it, and also how much information is around this whole idea of AI. From your perspective, how has AI changed the way that we interview?
That's a great question. So I'm going to talk about how it was pre-AI. It was recorded interviews where the interviewer had pre-recorded the questions. You selected a category, it populated, let's say 10 questions, and a spokeswoman or spokesman would come on and you would see the recording, then answer it, and then the recording would go on to the second question, which was pre-recorded, and on down the line. There was no generation of simulated question based on artificial intelligence, based on the inputs that you provided into the platform, like job description, job title, whether you wanted a hard or easy interview, whether you wanted a behavioral, a technical, or a comprehensive interview. So whether you wanted entry level or C-suite. I deal with lots of different industries, everybody from college students to CEOs, because even CEOs are very nervous about virtual interviews. So AI has allowed us to not only generate these simulated questions that are almost like a real interview, in the sense that they probe deeply based on answers and continue to ask questions based on your answers. Never had that before, but also give the user the ideal answer. So AI takes the answer you provided and generates the most ideal answer you could have given. So you can learn exactly how to improve on that answer based on the question that you had. And there's no two interviews that are identical. Even with the same entries and submissions to those things, we have 9 different fields that you can submit the data for. If you took it again with the same inputs, it would be tweaked a little bit and be a different interview. And not to embarrass him, but the architect of the software is Alex, who's on the screen right there. So kudos to him for creating and developing such an impactful platform.
That's pretty amazing. But then, Craig, what do you say about when people say, well, that's really cheating, right? You're using AI to answer the questions, but another candidate who may not be using AI to answer the questions, like, how is that fair? Like, what do you say to them?
What I would say is take advantage of every opportunity you have. AI exists today in a huge way. And why not? Why not be able to take advantage of what's available? And because if you don't, you never know what distracting mannerisms you have without the AI. I have clients that have idiosyncratic twitches on their nose. They play with their glasses. They scratch their hair. They look off camera. They don't smile. Smiling is underrated in interviews. So without the feedback to let you know where you're missing the mark, that AI provides, you're going to do the same thing in the actual interview and probably not get hired.
Wow. So I think the margins are very small now compared to how you have to have a perfect interview and being able to notice the little things that you do that can cause pause for the hiring manager, because we know it's going to be all about trust, and that's going to be critical. So now let's take it a little deeper. Can you share with us what our college students need to be thinking about when they're getting ready for a new role?
Sure. So what I would tell college students is practice, practice, practice. Do as much preparation as you possibly can. And the reason I would say that is because look at the return on investment. Whether it's someone trying to enter into college or a student graduating trying to get their first job, it is so important to prepare for that upcoming interview. And let's look at the numbers. If you're going for a $40,000 entry-level job and the practice AI platform sessions are $29 for 5 simulated mock interviews, what a great return on investment from $29 to $40,000 to let you know what you need to improve and what you're doing really well. It boosts that confidence. That is so important for the college student to have. And then I would say even go one step further, if that's something you want to do, and spend $200 or $300 for a 1-hour coaching session with someone that knows what they're talking about to round up the little parts that were missed during the AI simulated interview. It's that best of both worlds, the AI platform plus the hour coaching session, that we have researched and found you're 4 times more likely to be hired and get the job and get the acceptance into the college versus doing nothing to prepare.
Wow. Now, do you see that there are a lot more people who are not prepared for interviews in this space? Or do you think that the schools are telling the students that they have to be prepared for these interviews? Like, is it that this is an epidemic because nobody's talking to the students about how much they need to practice? Or is it just something that you're noticing? Do you notice the difference between whether they are being told to practice versus people actually practicing before these interviews?
No, I think it's an epidemic because people wing it. They feel they could just go in and knock it out of the ballpark, but with no practice.
Wow.
So I feel real certain that everybody can improve no matter who you are. Because again, it's very hard for you to self-correct during a nerve-wracking experience like interviewing. So everyone can improve. It is an epidemic proportion of people that need help. And I highly recommend them taking a simulated interview for, as little as $30 to help them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's dive into a whole different section. When you're working with these students, what are the things you're seeing outside of the behavioral or physical things that are happening during the interview? What is the thing you're seeing the most as things that they need to work on? And I get that practice is important, but I'm asking about the details of what are you seeing that they're doing the most, especially when they're trying to get to their first interview or their first job?
I would say 2 things. The first of which is, when do you ask questions to the interviewer? Everybody waits to the end. when the interviewer says, thanks for coming in, really appreciate talking to you for the last 45 minutes or an hour. Do you have any questions for us or for me? And then you rip off a series of 3 or 4 questions. Don't do that. Try to do it in the middle to establish that natural conversation like you're doing with me right now, Gerald. This is just a natural back and forth, and it's great. You're not reading any questions pre-rehearsed or noted down. It's a very natural back and forth with you and I. So ask a question after question number 4, number 7. For instance, I'm throwing that out there, for example. But try to get that question in there as a proper retort to something they asked you. And then a couple questions later, do it again. And it's that back and forth that will make you stand out versus everybody else that waits to the end. Very few people do that middle of the interview question back and forth. And that's the way you stand out. The second thing is how someone really stands out in what they do for the goal of an interview is an emotional connection. So how do you make an emotional connection with a complete stranger that you just met? There's 3 ways. And I mentioned one before, smiling. Again, underrated, but smiling pulls at the heartstrings of the interviewer. So can't recommend it enough. Try to smile. The goal should be once per answer, even at the end. And you pull in that interviewer, and there's just a great back and forth. And you start to laugh, and then there's side talk and talk about sports or whatever, but you're really getting involved with the interviewer through smiling. So the first thing I talked about was natural conversation. The second one is establishing that emotional connection with the interviewer. And you do it through smiling. The second way you can do it is through head nodding. I do it, and you're showing agreement and you're mirroring the interviewer. And the third way is just a little trick. Like right now, I'm 90 degrees to my lap. On important points, lean in 10 degrees.
Wow.
My face fills up. And you could do it. It especially helps for virtual interviews, but you could do it one-on-one in person. And so how you establish that emotional connection, smiling once per answer, leaning in, and head nodding.
Oh, I love that. That's expert advice, everybody who's here. Make sure you take that in.
And it's like, I can't help now but to go like this.
Right. And see, I know you're filling up the screen, you're really impactful, and no one does that. So again, little tweaks of how you can stand out.
Wow. And I think people are afraid too. You're at this space where it's very sensitive. And so you're afraid to actually really let your personality show through. But it's the very thing that you need in order to stand out is your personality.
Exactly.
When I had opportunities to speak, especially on stage, the way that we knew whether somebody had control of the stage versus someone who was nervous is that the first thing out of their mouth, they say their name, and then they let them know why they're there. But strong speakers actually talk about the topic first, go right into why all of you are gathered. And then after that first paragraph, then they say, my name is blah, 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 blah. So right off the bat, skilled speakers would know whether this person had training or not. And I thought that that was pretty interesting as well, which now brings me to the next question. And I may not get it right, but I'm very curious about this one. You've mentioned in the past and after talking with you that there is something about a 7, 33, and 55 rule, or those 3 numbers. Can you go into detail about what this special 7, 33, and 55 or 48, one of those numbers?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for asking. That's about how humans communicate. And it's very important during interviews. It's 7% is the spoken word. So it's how we communicate only 7%. So less than 10% is what we verbalize, what we say. 38% is tone of voice. And this is all factual through lots of research that's been done. So the 38% is important. If I was whispering, you wouldn't hear me. And if I was shouting, it would be uncomfortable and you would kind of tune me off and walk away. So you want that kind of even, sweet, mellifluous tone of voice. But the big one is the 55. And 7 and 38 and 55 add up to 100. The 55 is your nonverbal communication. So that's why smiling, eye contact, so important. You know, as you've been asking the questions, I've been zeroed in looking at you. Just as you've been asking the questions back to me, you're giving me direct eye contact. The smiling, any distracting mannerisms like I talked about, the itching of the nose, the glasses, the hair, looking off screen. These are all nonverbal communicated things back to the interviewer. And there's a loss of credibility as a result. So I want everybody to understand that over 50% of how you're perceived is body language, nonverbal communication. So that's another reason why it's so important to do a video simulated interview, so you know how you come across. Am I doing anything where I'm distracting the interviewer? And this would tell you, but you might not know it unless you did that.
Yeah. Wow. That is a great analogy and actually helps you really remember what those numbers are, because it is critical for the nonverbal stuff. Okay, so now I'm going to jump onto the other side. And what would be the best way to actually express something that you have deep knowledge of? So if I'm in a technical interview and I am applying for a technical role, how I express my confidence and ability to do the job, what do you suggest on the other side? Not the nonverbal stuff, but the actual verbal stuff. What should we be saying and how should we be engaging when it comes to our expertise in the interview?
Yeah, so very important here. You're giving your strengths. You're talking about your strengths. You might be creative. You might have great attention to detail. You might be a quick learner. Here's the way in which, based on those strengths, even in a technical interview, that you can really sway the interviewer. And that's by giving an example of that strength, that attention to detail, that technical ability, the quick learner. And, you know, let me tell you about how I'm a quick learner. I learned this language recently and was able to code within 3 days. And I taught myself through YouTube videos, whatever. But the reason that it's so important to give an example to each of the strengths or the reasons why you're saying why you're great is because not only will you stand out, but it's the evidence. It's the proof that you are what you said you are. I can go to any interview, and say I'm this, that, and the other, but I don't have the proof or the evidence to back it up. So always give that example in order to provide the proof. The other thing I wanted to mention is a common question is, what's your weakness? And so what you should say is an honest weakness that you want to overcome. But the interviewer or the panel of interviewers is not interested in the weakness. They're interested in how you're overcoming that. So I'm taking a class in proper time management, if that was the weakness, or I'm taking, I listen to webinars and podcasts like this and really want to improve, or I'm talking to friends that have the same type of weakness and I'm really learning and I am convinced I can overcome this, in the next quarter, whatever.
Wow. So all the information you gave us, I think some of us know that we would be able to get into an interview right now and feel a lot more confident just based on having a conversation with you in this way, in this space. And so I definitely want to just stop and pause, give anybody any, if you have any questions, additional questions that I didn't pull up, just add them to the chat, and then we will bring them to the stage so we can have a conversation. Also wanted to give Craig some time if he needed to drink something. He's been giving us all this information. I just wanted to give him an actual true break.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So one of the things that I'm learning is, and I just finished a book. It's called Upskilling to Win. It hasn't been fully out yet, a manuscript, but one of the areas in that book really helped me understand something. It was talking about the notion of being in the zone or flow, if you will.
Mhm.
And our environment creates the atmosphere in order to have this flow happen. And flow is like when all the stars align, where your communication is coming off and you know that the other person is receiving you, that everything that you're trying to do would have been a lot harder. But for some reason today, when everything is structured, things are just flowing and you're able to do a lot more in a lot less time. What we've learned is that that is not a haphazard or an event that just comes out of nowhere. It is actually designed by the environment and the structure that you put in place, which essentially means you can manufacture this flow. And so the book is really interesting, talking about how systems can bring you to a place where you can get into your flow a lot easier. So on that same vein, I do have a question. And this is relative to the opposite of flow. So when you first meet a graduate, a student, and they are interfacing with the new application, you mentioned that the practice, the three nonverbal cues are things that you're seeing. But what surprised you the most when you looked at all the people that have come through your platform that you've noticed as you started building out Interview Focus?
I would have to say that the biggest surprise has been lack of articulation, lack of articulating the stories that are at the forefront of any interview. You've got to go into an interview with 4 or 5 different types of stories that can be related to the question that's asked. And people just stumble, some freeze. They stumble over articulating clearly what the proper answer is. And that's why we try to provide the ideal answer on the platform through AI, as well as something that I concentrate on when I give 60-minute coaching sessions with people, how to articulate better and improve the communication between yourself and the interviewer.
So I think it's interesting. I would have thought that it would feel more authentic if you're stumbling through your words or you're trying to kind of get on the roadmap. And then once you get on the roadmap, it's like everything is flowing. I thought that that would be considered authentic and true, but it sounds to me, it shows you that you didn't practice enough.
Right.
Am I getting that right?
You are. You're spot on, because yeah, absolutely. Because it's all about credibility, and you're going to answer 8 to 10 questions, shake hands, and say goodbye and walk out. What did you leave behind that interviewer remembers you by? And it's clear articulation. It's no stumbling or very little. It's and let me add one little point here as well. Over those 10,000 interviews that I've done, I've developed, like anyone else, like an expert in coding or in sales or whatever. I make up my decision when we had the summer camp in the first 2 minutes. I knew whether I was going to hire that student athlete within 120 seconds or not. And then if it's no, Procter and Gamble taught me based on questions, just keep forking, and then eventually it's a no. You thank you very much for your time, and the interview is over, because I don't have time to waste, and I don't want to waste their time. And so, knowing that you've got to be spot on second one, as soon as the interviewer asks you that first question, you've got to nail it, so that if they are as experienced as someone like me that makes up their mind so quickly, you could be so impressive that they've got to keep saying yes on all those forks to keep you going for the next interview and the final interview and whatever the case may be. So you don't want to stumble out of the bag. And that's what I tell a lot of my clients, that they come to me very nervous. They never met me. I ask challenging questions. But by minute 30, 35, 40, they're very comfortable. The confidence is, they're blowing me away. But what I challenge them to do is be like minute 40 confidence at minute 1 when the actual one occurs. So you go in and you nail it. Because if you don't, then you're back with everybody else that did not stand out, that was not impressive, that the person has no memory, and just the interviewer puts them in with the pool of people that were unfortunately inadequate.
Wow. You see, this is why it's important to have these conversations, because some people think, well, I can warm up to it, right? I'll start here and then I'll warm up to the good stuff. But in actuality, not having the goods the minute you meet the first interviewer can actually impact the entire interview down the road. And it sounds to me that it's probably even more important to be really succinct, clean, and articulate your skill set. But you got to do it at the beginning. It's almost like the starter in the race. You get off that block, you have to hit it, because if you don't, it affects the rest of the race. And so I really resonated with what you're saying there. Okay, now take me back to your first interview. And what was that like for you? And what are the things that you saw in your first interview? I still remember my first interview. And then what are some of the things that you notice now? Just to go more tongue in cheek, what was it like when you did your first interview?
Yeah, sure. No one's ever asked me that. It's a great question. I got to think about it. But it was at Procter and Gamble, and what I had done in my summers at Vanderbilt that I could rely on answers was I worked at summer camps. So I had all these different experiences, and I was a manager at 18 and 19 and supervised a lot of the staff. I worked in the kitchen. I developed menus, things I never ever thought of. But I took over for a man that had to go to graduate school for a summer who was twice my age. And so it really challenged me. But the good thing was every question P&G asked me, I could relate back to the camp experience. I could pull it out easily. And that's why it's so important to have stories that you can articulate. Give me facts and figures of how you sold somebody. And so I would relate it back to camp and say, well, I had this menu idea. I wanted to start French toast in the morning, and I developed the cost. It was 37 cents per camper, and we bought the French toast. I came in under budget, and the director of the camp was really happy. So something like that. But it allowed me to go where the point is, no matter what the interviewer asked, I had a story to relate to that question. No matter what they asked, I had so many experiences, and everyone has those experiences: school, growing up, college, summer jobs like summer camp. Maybe you've worked full-time and taken a year off. Those are great experiences. Volunteer work, extracurricular activities, you name it. There's always those experiences where you can relate back to the questions that are asked. So it was very helpful. Had I not had the camp experience, probably would have not got the Procter & Gamble job. I've
Wow.
never thought of it that way. But your question made me think, if I was just run of the mill and, didn't do anything special, I probably wouldn't have gotten that job.
Wow. And that definitely made you stand out because you were talking about something you knew. You weren't
Yeah.
trying to make something up on the spot. You were actually
That's right.
going deep within your personal experience. And that's one thing I love about humans in general. We all have our own experiences that define who we are. And
Right.
even though AI can mimic a lot of people and all of this stuff, what I will say is we will always be human, and our ability to actually communicate from that core of who we are will outshine any system or any tool or anything that's there. And so for parents, we love when our young people and young adults are using their authenticity of who they are when they
Yeah.
get into these spaces and not trying to be somebody that they're not, because I think that's when we actually get into trouble. Okay, the time is moving really quickly. This has been a phenomenal turn of events and learning from Chris. But I wanted to give some space to share, to have Chris share about
Craig.
Craig,
Craig.
I'm sorry, Craig
That's okay.
share about what his platform is and how it works, so that you all are aware of the opportunities that we can give our young people when it comes to improving their chances of getting hired.
Yes, thanks for that opportunity, Gerald. Appreciate it. So our platform is really about putting in those entries into those 9 different fields that I talked about, like job description and title, and utilizing AI to create these simulated questions that the actual interviewer might ask. And we ask 8 different questions based on the entries that you've made. We record your answers. You can select between audio only interviews or video and audio interviews. Totally up to you. And we do a systems check to make sure that the lighting is proper and the speed, and we can hear you properly and the video is working. And then AI creates that first question based on your entries, and you give an answer. And then it probes even deeper based on that answer, and that process continues. After the 8th question, you are finished with the interview. A button comes up, would you like to see the results? And then we immediately give you the results of your interview in a very detailed and comprehensive fashion. Like, so much so that when I give demos, that people go, wow. That has to do with the ideal answer that we provide for each question. We give feedback on 10 essential skills, like eye contact, number of smiles. Did you use any filler words? So, like. How many of 12 different words that we look for did you say? And we're evaluating and scoring everything so that you know when you come back for another interview how much you've improved. And then on there's 8 different pages of comprehensive results, from performance analysis. We even test English proficiency for international students. And you can share the results with a professor, a mentor, a parent, a friend, and they would see the complete results that you just saw and give comments to help you along. And the other service that we provide is a 60-minute coaching session with me, where I go into even greater detail of how to improve. We do a role-playing exercise with various questions that I've researched based on the role that you're trying to interview for, and then talk about what questions you should ask. And a great question to ask, by the way, is how will this role be evaluated, and how is it measured? That tells you early on how you're performance will be evaluated and judged.
It also leans towards someone who has experience already, because if they are asking that question, that
Mhm.
means that they have a sense of, I want to do well in this role.
Mhm.
And they're letting the interviewer know that I would like to know specifically what those things are, because I believe that I can meet those standards. So always love that question, because a lot of people don't ask it.
No.
Another good one, I think, is, especially if you're more on the senior levels, is, can you give me some insight as to why this role is available?
Yeah. That's a
Because
great.
there
Yeah.
could be many reasons why it's available, and you understanding what that is critical in you being able to show up in that space. Or it may tell you that this is not the role that you want, right? Based off of that information. I hear this all the time. It's a two-way street. Not only are they interviewing you, but you are also
Yeah.
interviewing them.
Exactly.
That is
You're right.
phenomenal. All right, so we're gonna do one last thing. I'm gonna share a little bit about our platform, Reference Me. But
Okay.
before I do that, do you have any information that you want to share of how people can reach out to you?
Sure. Thanks for that opportunity. They can visit the site. It's just been refreshed very recently at interviewfocus.com. They can reach out to me anytime at info at interviewfocus.com, and be happy to answer any questions that they have.
Okay, fantastic. And if you're on this call and you're listening to this podcast, what we want to say to you is, you as a parent can help your children prepare by using some of these tools. It's just, if you don't know about them, then how can you use them? And we wanted to shed some light on some techniques that your college age students and adults can use to help them actually stand out in the interview. But also, sometimes as parents, we just feel helpless because we're like, I don't know any of this tech. This is not about tech. This is about humans talking to humans who happen to use tech. And so my company is called Reference Me, and we are much more focused on when a company decides that they have to lay off, we call it RIFs or things of that nature. What happens to all of those employees? They all have to go look for a new role. And so Reference Me wants to step in and actually support those companies when they're laying people off, so that they can treat their employees with dignity and respect. And so if you're interested in what we do, you can book an appointment by going to referenceme.ai. And once you book that appointment, we'll understand what your particular situation is and to see if we are a good fit to support your business. So I think we're gonna get ready to close. Just go to the chat if you want to collect some of the information about the different roles. But Craig, this was fantastic. Thank
Great.
you
Thank
for
you.
sharing with us
Sure.
how we can actually improve. And I always say, getting to the interview today is hard.
Mhm.
And if you're not getting enough practice, can you imagine what that is? If you've done hundreds of job applications just to get to one interview, but you're not prepared for the interview, then that is going to be wasted time. And
Right.
so parents, your college age students are competing with thousands and thousands of not only new grads, but they're competing with this saturated market of thousands of people being laid off. Every advantage that you can give them is critically important to their career, especially if you are starting out. I recommend that they should have done internships already. If they haven't done internships, then we need to at least try to get them in as an intern, even if they're not being paid for it, because the experience is going to be critical as they're actually growing to their next role. All right. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. This was just a wonderful conversation, and we really appreciate everyone being here. And Craig, thank you so very much for sharing this time with us and about how your system works.
Sure, my pleasure, and thank you for including me. Really loved being here. Are there any questions that need to be answered?
Anybody have any questions before we turn this off?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Craig, I think I have heard you mention something about STAR. Is there something about a star, or what is that
Yes.
about? I can't
Sure,
quite
sure.
remember.
So it's a method of answering questions that are behavioral. So questions like, tell me about a time you did da 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 da, or give me an example of. And it is STAR, STAR. And you would answer by providing the S is the situation, the T is a task, A, what action did you take, and R is the result.
Hmm.
So an example of that is, okay, I'm a VP of sales and my boss says, we need to increase sales by 20%. So that's the situation.
Mhm.
My task was to come up with some kind of plan to boost sales and boost sales quickly. The action I took was I took all my sales reps and we built displays at the end of the aisle that we sold our product. And the result was sales increased 25% and profit went up 10% because of the end caps. Something along those lines
Okay.
where you delineate between the situation, the task, the action, and the result. It's always good to conclude that story with what happened. What did you learn from it? And what we learned was that building displays helps increase sales, which met or exceeded the goal that the supervisor or leader wanted.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure, no problem. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely.
I have a question. Hi, Craig. I'm Shauna.
Hi, Shauna.
With our generation of youth, do you find it challenging, or is it harder to get them to understand the importance of people because we live in such a digital age now when it comes to interviewing? Yep. Tell me if you can hear me.
I can.
Okay. I said with our generation of youth, like our students are all things digital. Do you find it challenging to get them to understand the importance of people and engaging with people when it comes to interviewing?
It can be challenging, honestly. Yeah, it can be, because I'll tell you from my own experience with the summer camp. I did it for 15 years. And the reason I started this business was because of the poor eye contact that I got from the staff that I had hired. I didn't see that because it was all virtual interviews. I didn't know them that well. But when I worked with them and met them face to face, it was very challenging with not only eye contact, but use of filler words. They were just so enchanted with their phones. It was difficult to break that and show them you've got to get down at eye level with the children face to face and explain maybe how you could help them set goals or what they might have done wrong, and talk to them with empathy. And it was challenging. So not only from past work experiences, but what I see with young people today. Yes, the digital age has certainly affected them.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
The communication, that's the bottom line, and how they communicate is tough in certain circumstances.
Wow. That's a great question.
Yeah.
All right. We do like a countdown. 1, 2, 3, and then we'll go ahead and turn off the recording. Thank you, Tiffany, for putting the STAR method information in the chat as
Yes.
well. It's
Yeah.
very
Thank you.